At the end of my review of Nullzilla, I mentioned that it was the beginning of the end. An ominous way to end a review of an episode that was overall pretty fun and triumphant. But I meant what I said. Something did end with Nullzilla. Episodic stories. From here on out, as any ReBoot fan is aware, all episodes are directly connected and follow one after the other. We see this right away in Gigabyte, as the episode opens with the robot taken away, and Bob hunched over a very weakened hexadecimal.
Fong, this creature attacked hexadecimal first. Maybe it preys on viruses.
Which could mean Gigabyte.
That's right. I believe it may...
No! Gigabyte! No! No!
Glitch! Wide field energy beam!
Gigabyte was written by Phil Mitchell and Susan Turner, with story by Phil Mitchell and Susan Turner. The main cast includes Michael Benier as Bob, Kathleen Barr as Dot, Matthew Sinclair as Enzo, Shirley Milner as Hexadecimal, Scott McNeil as Hack, Gary Chalk as Slash, Michael Donovan as Fong, Andrea Libman as Andrea, Luis Valance as Mouse, and Blue Mankuma as Gigabyte. Megabyte, having been infected with the same strange thing that Hex was, chases after and attempts to merge with Hex before Bob can intervene. Bob manages to get the weakened virus, remember she was having her energy drained by millions of nulls, to his car and they take to the sky. Dot arrives in a cargo mover to try to slow Megabyte down, but it starts to infect the vehicle and she's forced to abandon that tactic. Meanwhile, Bob, totally perplexed at the attempted merger, asks Hexadecimal what all that was about, as she confirms what a savvy viewer will have figured out from Infected. Megabyte and Hexadecimal are brother and sister. All of their attempts to murder each other, sibling rivalry, duh. Dot warns that Megabyte is on the way, but the warning comes too late. He grabs Hexadecimal out of the car, and the two viruses merge together as they hit the ground. There's a new threat in Mayframe. Bob makes first contact.
I am Guardian 452. State your name and function.
I am become Gigabyte, destroyer of systems.
Not this system, bub. Glitch! Wide field energy beam!
Bob's hope that the merger created a benign virus is dashed when Gigabyte declares his intent and then begins to act on it. He possesses all of Megabyte's strength and endurance, but luckily, thanks to previously mentioned null drainage, none of Hexadecimal's powers, at least for the moment. As Fawn notes when talking with Bob, this is a really good thing, as otherwise he could have just made a portal to anywhere and caused an infinite amount of trouble. However, he's also picked up a new trick: energy absorption. All he has to do is touch a source of energy to absorb it, or get shot with an energy beam, as Bob and Dot later discover, the latter coming in with a CPU assault craft. Gigabyte uses his enormous claw arm to disable the craft, but she gets out, and her and Bob fly away on their zip boards. They don't get far at all, because Fawn shuts down all the power to the system to prevent Gigabyte from absorbing passing vehicles and billboards and the like. This shuts off the zip boards as well, and also serves to explain why no CPU vehicles show up again in the narrative. Bob and Dot are forced to land in an alleyway, and they are quickly cornered.
Dot, I want to tell you.
I know, Bob. I know.
There is no point in resisting, Guardian. Hand over your key tool. I need its energy.
Glitch! Away!
Two sprites will do just as well.
You called, Sugar?
Mouse is back. That was convenient. Maybe a little too convenient. I should also mention Bob has Glitch send out a network-wide distress call in regards to Gigabyte. So he was expecting help eventually. Just not so soon. Mouse explains that she was already on her way to mainframe when the signal was sent out. Bob, a little too trusting of her considering she's not super honourable, does look a gift horse in the mouth and simply thanks her. Dot merely distrusts her, but let's face it, that's probably the smart thing to do. Her actions in the Great Brain Robbery almost killed Enzo and got Megabyte in the core. Mouse has brought her own aircraft, which is independent of Mainframe's power, making her the only flight-capable craft in the city. She flies the three of them back, but Fawn doesn't want Mouse in the principal office. Bob protests, but Mouse hacks her way in and forces the shield to lower so they can land. Inside the principal office now, the sprites begin to discuss the situation. Gigabyte, meanwhile, seeks a snack.
Let me go! Let's face it, gang, it doesn't take a genius to work out where he's heading right now.
The shield is pure energy, so of course it is now the primary target of Gigabyte's energy consumption spree. The kind of energy in the shield will be enough to restore all of Hex's powers, and that would spell doom. Mouse suggests keeping him away from it somehow, and waiting until he runs out of juice, but Bob throws out a very different plan. Give him all the energy he needs. The others are flabbergasted, but Bob simply says to trust him and tells Mouse to fetch a tear. If you remember episode 1, you might have already guessed where this is going. Bob gets geared up for battle in a more protective suit of armor, and Dot gets roped into being Mouse's co-pilot, since something like this is apparently a two-person job.
Glitch, solid state mode.
I hope Bob knows what he's doing. Sugar, I've known that Guardian a lot longer than you, and I've seen him get out of a lot tougher scrapes than this. Now make yourself useful, honey, and help me scan for tears. We haven't got a lot of time.
Bob engages Gigabyte, with the hope of distracting him long enough for Dot and Mouse to return with a tear from the edge of the system. And it goes as you might expect. That is to say, Gigabyte more or less just tosses him around. The battle seems over before it began, but Bob gets help from an unlikely source. Hack and Slash. With some added muscle behind him, Gigabyte has his hands full. Meanwhile, Dot and Mouse fly out to the sea to find a big enough tear to drop on the viral threat. You could cut the tension between them with a knife, and neither are particularly happy about the other's presence. As Hack and Slash keep Gigabyte occupied, Bob tells Fawn to disengage the current area, floating point, from the rest of Mainframe, so that Gigabyte can't reach the principal office or harm any other denizens of Mainframe. I didn't know that was a thing that could happen. But that's really cool. Our heroines have found themselves a tear in the meantime.
Moving into final position, Mouse. Be quick! There's a massive energy fluctuation. This is the weakest part of the containment field.
Just as she says that, the containment field surrounding the tear loses stability and causes the little basket Mouse is in to collapse. Mouse falls towards the sea, but Dot employs some fancy flying and manages to grab her and rescue her in the nick of time. Mouse hesitates to thank Dot, but does so eventually, and Dot says that thanks isn't necessary. They're even now. Near-death experiences usually do help people bond. Speaking of near-death...
In a few more nanos, he'll be too far from the city to get back, and there's nowhere for him to get energy from. Apart from us!
Hack! Oh, Hack, speak to me! I want... Wake up! Drain my friend of energy? I don't think so!
You idiot! Look what you've done!
Slash's emotional punch was very impressive, but unfortunately it means Gigabyte now has an unobstructed path to the principal office. Gigabyte's absorption of Hax's energy grants him the ability to hover like Hex can, and Fawn is forced to lower the shield. Gigabyte tears the door apart and sees Enzo and Andrea standing guard. Gigabyte is incredulous, until Frisket appears and attacks Gigabyte. Sadly, Frisket is made quick work of and gets his energy drained as well. However, it does buy enough time for not only Bob and Slash to reach the building, but also for Dot and Mouse to arrive and drop the tear on top of him.
Energy! The power! The power!
Actually, this power we can both use. Glitch! Splitter!
Bob, caught off guard by the third entity split by Glitch's command, watches as the three beings are scattered back out into mainframe, having serious ramifications down the road. It seems odd that Bob is so befuddled by the third presence, as he knew something was behind the whole virus's being attacked thing. But whatever. When all seems well and good, we see Mouse place a tracker on Bob. Oops. There's a lot to love here. The feeling of a real and serious threat that Bob actually calls for help to deal with. A great villain character who sadly is gone too soon. And of course, the most important point, and one that I will repeat as often as needed. The format of the show changing from episodic adventures to long-form storytelling. All aspiring writers take note. While there is nothing wrong with episodic shows, what ReBoot has done here is the perfect model. Use episodic format to introduce characters and establish the world, then jump into impactful and weighty story arcs. Bing, bang, boom. I have some tiny nitpicks. How did Gigabyte catch up to anyone when he walks so slow? Why does Bob seem so shocked by a third entity, when him and Fawn were literally talking about it at the beginning? Why wasn't the giant robot used to fight the virus? None of these really pull down the narrative, and the last one was a joke. Sort of. The fact remains that this is a unique thriller that does so much for the show going forward. So, it gets 3 out of 3 from me.